Do you want to learn Blender? Are you brand new? Or are you coming from a program like Maya, Max, or even Moto? I'm Drake. I make things. Welcome to Drake Makes. Hey, welcome to the first episode of Drake Makes. I'm Drake, a talking horse with over 12 years working as a professional 3D artist. I've done games, film, and advertising, and I've picked up some pretty useful tricks along the way. Today, we're going to dive into a free and absolutely incredible program called Blender, but there is a catch. My lessons are built around something called the industry compatible keyset as opposed to the standard Blender keyset. Now, what does that mean? It means that Blender will have a new set of keybinds that make it behave like Maya, Unity, and other industry leading programs. This also means that when you want to learn something new, say Unity or Unreal, there's a good chance at least part of your new muscle memory from this series will kick in and take out a lot of early guesswork. Things like moving your camera around, manipulating objects, making them bigger, smaller, rotating them. All these kinds of things will become second nature by using the industry compatible keyset. So the first thing we're going to want to do is go to blender.org and find the download button. We're going to be downloading Blender 3.6 for the purpose of this tutorial, but realistically any version after 3.0 and onwards will work just as well. Click download, install, and I'll see you in the next section. So once you have Blender installed and you open it for the first time, you'll see a splash screen. If this is your first time opening Blender, your splash screen will look a little different. Otherwise, it'll look like this if you've been using it before. Either way, it's not important. You can just click anywhere inside Blender and it will go away. And now you're presented with Blender. There's a default cube in the scene. No one's exactly sure why. Everyone deletes it. We're not going to worry about that right now. I'm going to go over some basic UI elements though first. This large area here is called the 3D viewport. This is the lifeblood of any 3D modeling program. It's where you will model, it's where you will do your lighting, it's where you will do your rendering, it is where you will do pretty much everything that has to actually do with 3D art. Over here on your left is the toolbar. The toolbar contains all the basic tools that you will need depending on the mode that you're in. If you don't want to remember hotkeys or you can't remember hotkeys, this is where you will find things such as move, rotate, scale, general transform, all sorts of things that we will go over. Top right, you have what is called the hierarchy. The hierarchy is a list that will allow you to see anything that is in your scene, and especially in busier scenes, it can be very useful for selecting things and finding them without having to dig through a bunch of mesh. Down here, we have our properties, settings, and other tools. And this is actually probably the most important part of Blender. This is where you can set things such as your render engine, which is something we'll go over later. Render output size, so document resolution, where you can set things like your background lighting and color. Your object properties, which allow you to see the location, rotation, and scale of an object. In this case, it's showing us what the light is doing. Physics, data specific to an object. So this would be specific to the light object. If I click the cube here, it changes. This is where you will do most of your actual tweaking with objects. And again, we will go over this later. Down here is your timeline. Your timeline is just for animation. This is where you will do things such as set up keyframes, open your dope sheet, anything that requires animating. The first thing I want to do though is I want to take Blender and I want to change it over to industry compatible. And for that, I'm going to go up to Edit, Preferences, and then there should be a button that says Key Map. If you click Key Map, here it will say Blender. Just click the drop down, change it to industry compatible. You don't have to do anything else. Simply close it, and you're all set. If you want to save this key input so that you don't have to set it again the next time you open Blender, you have to go to File, Defaults, Save Startup File. Click it again, and now every time you open Blender, you will have this exact scene with these exact keybinds. This also means that if you wanted to do something like load a scene without a default cube in it, you can simply select your cube, hit delete on your keyboard, and then go back to File, Defaults, Save Startup File. And now every time you launch Blender, it will have the cube missing, and it will have your industry compatible keybinds set as default. I'd like to take a minute to just explain myself and my reasoning behind using the industry-compatible keybinds. You see, Blender has been around since the mid-90s, but unfortunately the keybinds that they created are pretty much exclusive only to that software. As a result, using anything else will kind of leave you in the dark. The industry-compatible keybinds were made by a group of people, myself included, years ago, to allow those who have experience with Maya, Max, Modo, and so forth a certain layer of interoperability so that we could actually use Blender without having to relearn a whole set of hotkeys that we would never use anywhere else. As a result, the industry-compatible toolset is an excellent way for you to learn how to both use Blender and be prepared for future programs that you might want to integrate into your workflow. We're back in Blender, and I'm going to show you what the industry-compatible keybinds will actually do. The most important thing is they will allow you to move your camera. The camera being the abstract concept of the thing that you are looking through at all times in your 3D viewport, or, if you're actually setting up a camera, your real camera. The easiest way to describe this is that you should always hold down Alt when you're trying to move. So if you hold down Alt, and then hold down your left mouse button, you will rotate if you drag around. I'm going to let go of the left mouse button. I'm still holding down Alt, and I will hold down the middle mouse button, the scroll wheel. Click it down and hold it. That allows you to pan. Release, and now if you hold down the right mouse button, you can zoom in and out. You can also zoom in and out if you release Alt and just move up or down on the scroll wheel. The only real reason to use the Alt and right mouse method is that it's a little bit more precise. So, since we deleted the default cube, as is tradition, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go up here to Add, Mesh, Cube. Now that you have your cube, you can deselect it by clicking anywhere that isn't the cube, and you can select it by left-clicking on the cube. You'll notice this weird little three-colored thing with a circle around it. This, with the boxes on the ends, signifies that it is a resize widget. Rotate, rotates it, and move, moves it. This means you can grab something like the blue arrow, hold down and drag it up and down, green, and red. Rotate. Rotate your object however you see fit. And scale. You can scale it in different directions, or if you grab the white circle, you can scale it uniformly. I'm just going to Control Z until our cube is back to normal. The industry compatible toolset gives you the option to use W, E, and R on your keyboard. W is move, E is rotate, R is scale. These are the same three keys that are used in Unity, in Unreal, in 3ds Max, in Maya, in Modo, Cinema 4D. Pretty much every other 3D program on the planet uses W for move, E for rotate, R for scale. No, I don't know why R is not rotate. That's just how it is. Once more, that's W for move, E for rotate, R for scale.
Another important thing to know is what's called framing or focusing. So now that you know how to use your camera, if I were to hold down Alt and rotate around, but I wanted to look at something over to my left, I'm going to go over to my left, and now if I try and rotate my camera, you notice the cube is no longer in the center of my field of view. So how do you fix this? How do you look at this object again without having to go over and try and guess roughly where to rotate around? You can left click to select your object, and on your keyboard you hit F. F for frame or focus. And you can zoom out a little bit, and now this occupies the center of our field of view. There's obviously a lot more to go over with Blender and 3D in general, and we're going to, but I want to try and keep these videos somewhat short and to the point. I want you to come away from each one with a basic understanding of each principle that we're going to go over. So today we've learned how to move the camera, we've learned how to change our keybinds, we've learned how to save a default file, and we've learned what move, rotate, and scale do. We've also learned a bunch of user interface elements, which will come in very, very handy very, very soon. So until next time, I'm Drake, I make things, and this was Drake Makes.